When you hear the name Elon Musk, you probably think of rockets, electric cars, maybe a social media platform. But what if all those things, all those seemingly separate projects, are actually connected? Well, in this explainer, we're diving into a recent interview with him to pull back the curtain on a single unifying theory that seems to be the driving force behind everything he builds.
I mean, think about it. Tesla, SpaceX, his whole takeover of Twitter, it can all feel a bit random. But what if it's not? What if there's one core idea, one giant goal that connects all of those dots? We're going to follow his logic and see exactly where it takes us.
And we're going to use his own words to trace the line from social media to AI to the future of work and all the way to some pretty wild predictions he has about the very nature of our reality.
Okay, so to get the big picture, we've got to start with something that on the surface seems pretty small. The app he now calls X. It turns out his vision for it is, well, it's way, way bigger than just a social network. Musk is super blunt about this. For him, X isn't just about creating a digital town square. No, it's about building a tool that can literally merge the thoughts and ideas of all humanity into one single functional system. He looks at it like an engineer. How do you upgrade humanity's collective intelligence? So, collective consciousness. I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But what does he actually mean by that? For him, it's all about improving how information flows between us. The idea is that if we can communicate faster and better, the group itself becomes smarter, more capable than just the sum of its parts. He has this really powerful analogy to explain it. Think about it. A single one of your cells is, well, it's just a cell, but trillions of them working together create you, a being that can think and talk. Now take that same logic and apply it to us. One human can't build a spaceship, but a whole bunch of us working together, we can. So his big question is, if we radically improve the connections between all of us, what incredible new things could we achieve? So let's imagine we pull it off. Humanity achieves this higher level of consciousness. What kind of world does that create? Well, this is where his predictions about AI, robots, and the future of work come in. And this is where it gets really wild. He makes this incredibly bold claim. In less than 20 years, maybe even just 10 or 15, he thinks AI and robotics will make having a job completely optional. I'm not talking about a 4-day work week. I mean no work week. Unless you kind of want one, as a hobby. This all leads to a future he calls post-scarcity, a world where AI and robots can produce just a complete abundance of goods and services for every single person. And in a world like that, he says the whole idea of money, which he basically sees as just a system for allocating labor, it just becomes obsolete. Just let that sink in for a second. The thing that limits you in this future isn't money or resources, it's just your own imagination. Okay, so we've got a collective consciousness creating a world of complete abundance. But why? What's the end goal here? This is where Musk's whole theory goes from engineering into pure philosophy. And the answer, believe it or not, comes from a sci-fi comedy book. Musk says his entire worldview was shaped by Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where this giant supercomputer figures out that the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is just 42. But for Musk, that joke holds a really profound truth. See, the problem wasn't the answer, 42. The problem was that nobody even knew what the ultimate question was to begin with. And that's the key takeaway for him. The hard part isn't finding answers, it's figuring out what questions we should even be asking. And there it is. That is the core of his theory of everything. The whole reason for building a collective consciousness, for building X, for pushing AI, for creating a world without work. It's all to expand our consciousness so that we can finally get smart enough to figure out what questions we're supposed to be asking about the universe. So once you start trying to ask the right questions about the universe, you eventually run into the biggest question of all. What even is this universe? And that brings us to the final and honestly, the most startling part of his entire worldview. When you ask him directly, Musk says there's a pretty high probability that our entire existence is a simulation. And he's not just saying that as some fun thought experiment, he means it as a logical conclusion.
His argument is actually surprisingly simple, and it's all based on video games. 50 years ago, we had Pong, 2 rectangles and a square. Today, we have these mind-blowing photorealistic virtual worlds. If you just follow that trend line into the future, it seems almost inevitable that we'll create simulations that are completely indistinguishable from reality. So if it's possible to create billions or trillions of simulated realities, what are the odds that we just happen to be in the one original base reality?
And then he adds this one last fascinating layer to it. In our own reality, what do we do with boring simulations? We discard them. At Tesla, for example, they look for the most interesting driving scenarios for their data. So he argues that from a kind of Darwinian perspective, only the most interesting simulations would be allowed to keep running, which means the most interesting outcome is the most likely.
So there you have it. From a social media app, to a collective consciousness, to a future with no jobs, all of it designed to help us ask better questions about a universe that is, in all likelihood, an interesting simulation. It's a complete philosophy, from top to bottom. And it leaves us with one final and kind of chilling question. If our reality has only survived this long because it's been interesting,